You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
Good morning. This is James Morris from Ask the Master Auto Technician. It is a Tuesday morning. It's early. It's dark outside. I'm still awake. Well, I'm somewhat still asleep, I should say. But anyway, I'm getting there, and after about 4 or 5 cups of coffee, maybe I can get where I'm supposed to be and talk to you a little bit about car repair, and some of the things I see that the do-it-yourselfer and even shops do that I find, well, that's not a permanent fix. And the most common thing that I see is on any car, you've got to, well, it's like building a house. You've got to have a good foundation. Well, on electrical systems such as your radio and the way the car drives, misfires and things like that, you've got to have a good battery. And when I say a good battery, I mean a fully charged battery, which is 12.65, and a good charging system as well, like the alternator putting out 13.8 to 14.2 volts at idle with the load zone. Anything less than that may be a problem. And you've got to also make sure that not only are those things correct, that you got to make sure the diodes are correct, the charging system, that there's not a open gate that's swinging both directions, allowing AC current to go into the computer, causing misfires. That's why I'm trying to tell people out there, please, when you're dealing with drivability systems, start at the beginning. Clean battery terminals, nice and tight, with permanent battery cable ends are very, very important. Failure to do that is going to kick you in the butt and cause a lot of problems. And I've got someone calling right now early this morning. I can't believe he's that awake. The 2014 Honda Odyssey. Bill, what's your question about your Honda Odyssey, sir?
Morning, James.
Good morning.
My wife just took her Honda Odyssey in and has had the oil changed once in 30,000 miles, and they told her at 30,000 miles that it didn't even need an oil change yet.
So I'm sorry. She took it in to get the oil changed and it's got 30,000 miles on the same oil and the same filter, and they told her it didn't need to be changed.
No, I'm sorry. It had been changed once. They changed it at 15,000.
Yeah.
And when she took it in for a 30,000, they said that the oil wasn't ready to be changed and didn't need to be changed yet. And it had been changed once in 30,000 miles.
What they're doing is they're looking at the onboard computer that's saying, okay, that uses certain mathematical equations on their driving habits to say, oh, you've still got so much life left in your oil. Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're looking at? Okay.
Exactly right.
Hey, I want to tell you this. If you follow that at 100,000 miles, you get to buy a new car.
Yep, I agree.
And
I think you're absolutely right.
And I'm not saying that just to be, Mr. Smarty Pants over here.
No, I agree.
I'm saying this is because the Society of Automotive Engineers and the American Petroleum Institute say if you do this, your oil filter is in bypass. It's not even filtering after 4,000 to 5,000 miles because it's already gotten all it's already clogged up the filter. It can't do it. It just will not work after 4,000 to 5,000 miles.
A good way to determine whether or not the filter's got any particulates in it would be to weigh a new filter and weigh your filter.
Well, you can do that, but that's a little bit, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Anyhow, you have to have them wet too with oil, of course, but the best thing I would recommend, sir, is I wouldn't push my oil change, even if they're paying for my oil change once a year and it's part of the warranty, I would still get my oil changed no more than every 6 months or over 5,000 miles, and I would change the filter, and I'd have my car inspected by a professional automotive diagnostic shop. And then the other time, I'd have Honda take care of it under warranty like they're supposed to. Because what's the number one job of an automotive dealership? What's the number one job?
But will they change that oil if you want them to change it before they say it's ready?
I can't answer that question because I don't know their policy. You're going to have to ask them. I know that in a lot of cases they won't because they say, look, we're only budgeting, when we sold you this policy, when we bought it, we wanted to only change your oil when the car says it needs to be done. And, and they figure maybe once a year or something like that. Well, the next thing you know, you've done it like they followed once a year, and you've got 50, 60,000 miles on it, and now you've got timing chain rattles, or you don't have a timing chain, but still you have things that go wrong with it, or you get sludge buildup. You would be surprised how many cars I have to tear the oil pans off and valve covers off to clean the sludge out because they go this far between oil changes. Such as, what was the last car I did? I did a 2008 Camry that probably had a ½ inch of sludge over everything. It was so bad, I ended up having to pull the oil pan off and clean up all the sludge that fell down, or it wouldn't have any oil pressure. And this car only had 80,000 miles on it, and it was a 2008. And they changed their oil once a year, whether they needed it or not.
Thank you. I sure appreciate that. I hope she's going to pay attention.
Well, you know, you can lead you can lead a horse to water. Not calling your wife a horse, but
So I understand what you're saying.
yeah, please be careful. Just please get it changed at least every 6 months or every 5,000 miles in that area, or twice a year. If you do that, your car you will wear the seats out before you wear the engine out, using a good quality oil and a good quality filter. You shouldn't have any problems with this Honda for hundreds of thousands of miles.
Wonderful. Thank
All
you,
right, you're
James.
very,
I
very-
appreciate it.
Okay, glad you're listening to the show and watching it. Hey, this is James Morse. You got a car question, pick up that phone, dial 850-763-0555. We're coming to you live from the high atop the studios of we're only one story, James Auto Center in Panama City, Florida, 1301 East 11th Street. We've been doing automotive advice, repair, counseling on the radio and television since 1998. Before that, we were in the local shopping papers. I think the Thrifty Nickel, we were in that. I started doing that around 1990 because I kind of, I was reading an article like Ann Landers or something like that, how to help people out. And I like to help people. That may be to a fault, but I like to try to help people, point them in the right direction, especially on something that if people can't afford to fix something, paying a professional, maybe they can be able to take care of it themselves. Because there's a lot of people out there, well, they don't have two nickels to rub together, and they still have to get to work. They still have to they still have to make sure the kids have food on the table, and they're just struggling to get by, and maybe there's something they can do themselves with a little advice. And that's what this show was originally designed for. It was to help the do-it-yourselfer that needed some help. It was also to help the professional out there, because I actually see a lot of professionals out here that they kind of get lost in the forest when it comes to drivability diagnostics. I see it happen in my shop sometimes. Sometimes we forget a step, like checking a fuel pump. Giving it perfect example. I have when you check a fuel pump, you should check volume, pressure. Make sure it has the right amount of volume. It should be at least a half a pint in 15 seconds, a full pint in 30. That's just kind of a general rule of thumb. It's not scientific, but if you have a half a pint in 15 seconds, a full pint of fuel in 30 seconds, and the engine stays running while you're testing it, trust me, you got enough volume. And then what's the other thing on here? You want to make sure it's good quality too. You want to make sure it doesn't have more than, get this, 10% ethanol. Everybody goes, well, that's what it says on there. It contains up to 10% ethanol. I shouldn't have any more than that. You would be surprised how many drivability cars that come in here with 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17% ethanol concentration in their fuel. And you go, how could that happen? Well, things happen. A car sits, it's stacked, the water the ethanol enriched water goes to the bottom, you put more in there, it absorbs it, next thing you know, you got a lot of concentration of it. That's why they used to say, hey, you shouldn't run your gas tanks low of fuel, because it's going to cause your fuel pump not to stay cool. So every half a tank, when you get down to half a tank, you should fill up. I'm telling people right now, you really should get down to about less than a quarter of a tank, around an eighth of a tank, believe it or not, and then go fill up. If you don't, you're going to get a higher concentration of ethanol in your car, vehicle, whatever you've got.
So this is something we learned through the real life
Yeah.
application of ethanol. It didn't start out this way.
No, it
Nobody
didn't.
expected this to happen.
No, it didn't. It's just something we kind of stumbled into. I actually have it looks like a test tube. It's a graduated test tube in there, and you put so much water in it and so much alcohol, so much gasoline out of the vehicle that you're working on. You shake it up, set it over there, and wait about 30 seconds to a minute and a half, and you can see how much the percentage of ethanol or alcohol you have in your vehicle. We average, I would say, most 9 to 10% what I see coming here, and sometimes that 9 to 10% is too high for some of the older model cars to run correctly. My 94 Chevy truck, it does not like anything more than 6 or 7%. It wants to sit there and idle's a little weird. I don't know why it just does. But if I get ethanol gas in there that's less than 6 or 7%, it doesn't seem to be giving a problem. It seems to run okay. So to avoid that problem, using non-ethanol fuel seems to have solved that problem. The disadvantage of using non-ethanol fuel is most non-ethanol fuels do not contain detergent additives. They don't contain it because, well, they say, well, they're making them strictly for off-road vehicles. They're carbureted or your weed whacker. You don't need detergent additives in there. Wrong answer. You still need detergent additives in there because the byproduct of combustion is carbon. Whether it's a gasoline engine on a lawnmower or a weed whacker or whatever, you're still going to have problems with carbon. So what we do is by having non-ethanol fuel in there, it doesn't dissolve the gaskets, the paper gaskets in the carburetor. That's the advantage of having non-ethanol fuel. The other advantage of having non-ethanol fuel, it doesn't make the soft rubber parts like the O-rings and things that are very soft and supple. It doesn't dry them out and crack them, because that's what it does. It actually, the solvent that's in the ethanol, which is a solvent, does a great job of pulling out the elastomers that are in rubber products like O-rings, causing them to crack. They actually have ethanol-resistant gas lines out there for older model vehicles. You pay twice as much for them, but if you have an older model collectible, please put them on there, because after a year of having ethanol fuel in a vehicle, go take a look at what your old carbureted gas lines look like. They're cracked, they're hard, they've gotten a shape that once you straighten them out, they're going to crack and start leaking. So this ethanol resistant, I shouldn't say ethanol proof, ethanol resistant gas lines do a superior job in taking care of keeping your car where you can run ethanol fuel in it. The disadvantage of ethanol fuel, like I said, it dissolves paper. It does. It'll dissolve. If you have a carburetor, you have paper in the gaskets of the carburetor. That's how it's made. That's how, a lot of people don't even know about carburetors out there, but gaskets are put together with paper gaskets. I didn't say that right. The carburetor gaskets are made out of paper, and ethanol will destroy cellulose. That's what it is, and that's all it is. It's just from trees, and it comes apart and it clogs up all the little jets. We'll take one apart on an old car and look at it. I go, look at that, the jet's clogged up. Hey, it's got something green in it inside the jet. I said, yeah, that's pieces of dissolved paper from the gasket that used to be on the float bowl there. That's what you're seeing right there. You're seeing dissolved pieces of paper that are clogged in the jets, and when the car sits, it settles to the bottom and clogs things up. And that's usually what ends up happening. So using non-ethanol fuel has the advantage of not dissolving the paper gaskets, has an advantage of not being such a great solvent that it dries everything out. And the other disadvantage of having non-ethanol fuel, though this is a disadvantage, is it does not have the additives such as Techron. Now, that's a name brand that Chevron uses, I think Texaco uses. It's the main additive in there, so that's the most important thing. If you're going to use non-ethanol fuel, please use a additive such as my wife's saying break. I know, Anna Marie, I'm looking at the clock right here. But please use something as an additive. If you don't do that, you're going to end up paying a price down the road. It's money ahead. That extra $3 or $4 that you buy and put in a tank every other tank of fuel is worth the money. Hey, this is James Morris. If you've got a car question, want to be a part of the show on this early Tuesday morning, give us a call at 850-763-0555. Scott Hobbs should be calling in just a minute, and we're going to talk about cold weather that's coming. It should be right around the corner, and if you got an electric water heater, you might want to listen. We'll be right back.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.